While millions of people still say, "Oh my God, they killed Kenny for the 1,000th time," and rewatch more than 300 episodes of construction paper cutouts saying things that would get most people fired, there is a specific type of person drawn to South Park like a cult. According to psychology, their brains process humor, morality, and social boundaries in ways that are fundamentally different from everyone else. Stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you will completely explain why South Park fans are the way they are. Here is the thing nobody talks about. Binge-watching South Park is not just about enjoying crude humor. It is not about laughing at fart jokes or shock value. There is something specific happening in the brains of people who can consume 26 seasons of animated chaos without flinching, and it reveals something profound about how they see the world. Let's start with why South Park works at all. The show premiered in 1997 and immediately did something no other animated series had done. It weaponized satire at a speed that traditional comedy could not match. South Park episodes are written, animated, and aired in 6 days. This means they are commenting on events that happened this week, not 6 months ago. For people who binge South Park, their brains are getting something most entertainment cannot provide. They are getting real-time cultural commentary disguised as cartoon children swearing. When someone watches South Park, their brain is not just processing jokes. It is engaging in what psychologists call cognitive flexibility training. Every episode attacks sacred cows from multiple angles. Liberals and conservatives both get destroyed. Nothing is off limits. For the South Park binge watcher, this creates a specific kind of dopamine hit. Not the comfort dopamine of predictable sitcoms, but the surprise dopamine of "I cannot believe they just said that." But here is where it gets interesting. People who binge South Park often score high on what is called openness to taboo humor. This is not the same as being offensive or cruel. It is a psychological trait where your brain can separate the joke structure from the content. You understand that Matt Stone and Trey Parker are not endorsing the outrageous things their characters say. You are laughing at the absurdity, the audacity, the commentary beneath the vulgarity. And there is real research backing this up. A study from 2017 on dark humor appreciation found that people who enjoy transgressive comedy score significantly higher in verbal intelligence and lower in aggression and mood disturbance. Translation? South Park fans are not crude because they are stupid. They are engaging with sophisticated satire that requires high-level cognitive processing to decode. Their brains are doing more work than it looks like. But wait, it gets weirder. What happens in the brain of a South Park binge watcher is legitimately different from other comedy consumption. You know that feeling when a joke makes you uncomfortable and laugh at the same time? That is cognitive dissonance, and South Park weaponizes it constantly. Your brain is processing conflicting emotions simultaneously. This is wrong. This is funny. This is offensive. This is brilliant. And for some brains, that tension is addictive. Studies using neuroimaging show that processing complex satire activates the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for critical thinking and moral reasoning. South Park fans are not turning their brains off. They are turning them on at full capacity, constantly evaluating whether they are laughing at the joke or with the joke, and whether the target deserves it. Think about that. Your ability to binge 12 episodes of Cartman being a sociopath might literally be tied to your brain's capacity for moral complexity. But there is another layer that explains everything about South Park bingers. It comes down to anti-authority psychology. South Park has spent 26 seasons saying everyone is wrong about everything, and we will prove it. The show does not have heroes. It has flawed characters who occasionally stumble into correct positions while being idiots about everything else. People who binge South Park often have what psychologists call a high need for cognitive independence. They do not trust institutions, narratives, or people telling them how to think. They are naturally skeptical, and South Park validates that skepticism every single episode. The show's entire philosophy is question everything, trust no one, laugh at everyone. For people wired to resist groupthink, that is not just entertainment, that is ideological permission. A 2019 study found that people who preferred satirical comedy scored significantly higher in critical thinking skills and lower in authoritarianism. They are not following. They are analyzing. And South Park gives them 300 plus episodes of ammunition to tear apart cultural hypocrisy. Here is something that sounds contradictory, but explains everything. South Park fans often appear cynical, but they are actually deeply moral. The show only works if you have a strong moral framework to recognize when it is being violated. You cannot laugh at the absurdity of cancel culture, political correctness gone wrong, or corporate manipulation unless you understand the legitimate concerns beneath them. When you binge South Park, you are watching a show that says, yes, this issue matters, but the way everyone is handling it is insane. That is not nihilism, that is frustrated idealism. For people who feel gaslit by mainstream narratives that oversimplify everything, South Park feels like the only honest voice in the room. People who cannot stand South Park often have lower tolerance for ambiguity. They need clear heroes and villains. They need to know who to root for. South Park refuses to give that. Every character is terrible, and every position is flawed. If you cannot handle moral complexity, the show feels chaotic and pointless. But here is the part that explains why South Park bingers sometimes cannot watch anything else. It comes down to how you process authenticity versus polish. South Park looks terrible on purpose. The animation is crude, the voice acting is intentionally rough, and the production values signal that the creators made each episode in about 6 days. For some viewers, that raw presentation feels more honest than expensive productions with perfect CGI and focus group scripted dialogue. South Park fans find comfort in unfiltered chaos. The show feels like what people actually think, but are too scared to say. In an era of corporate-approved content, algorithm-optimized storytelling, and fear of cancellation, South Park is one of the last shows that genuinely does not care. For viewers exhausted by performative authenticity, that is not just refreshing. That is necessary. Researchers call this a preference for unfiltered content over curated content. South Park bingers prefer media that feels dangerous, unpredictable, and willing to fail spectacularly. They are not seeking comfort. They are seeking the adrenaline of surprising taboo or risky choices, the feeling of, did they really just do that? Here is what is really interesting. People who binge South Park often report being more skeptical of mainstream media, more resistant to political tribalism, and more capable of finding humor in their own beliefs being mocked. There is something quietly self-aware about that. They have decided that no position, including their own, should be immune from criticism. Now, before the comments explode, I'm not saying South Park fans are enlightened truth seekers. I'm saying there are legitimate psychological differences. Their humor processing is designed for complexity. Their moral reasoning embraces ambiguity. Their authenticity detectors are hypersensitive to manipulation. People who binge South Park are not desensitized degenerates. They are engaging with one of the most sophisticated forms of social satire ever produced. Their brains process multiple layers simultaneously: the surface joke, the satirical target, the cultural context, and the meta-commentary on why this topic is even controversial. So what does this mean? If you have binged South Park multiple times, you are not just watching crude cartoons. Your brain's reward system, your moral complexity threshold, and your resistance to authority are all calibrated to need content that challenges consensus reality. And that is not juvenile. That is intellectually courageous. The next time someone asks how you can watch that garbage, remember you are not lowbrow. You are not immature. You are seeking honesty in a world drowning in careful messaging. And sometimes that honesty comes from construction paper cutouts saying the quiet part loud. If this resonated, you will appreciate the psychology of people who cannot stand political correctness and what that reveals about cognitive independence. Click the next video to understand why your brain refuses to comply.